What's up, everyone? Welcome to Loghouse Strong. I'm Alex Lawrence, and today we're going to look at a contest preview of the 2025 Shuswap Showdown in Sicamous, BC, which will be held on July 19th. So the way I'm going to do this is we're going to look at the events, and then the weights for those events, and then we're going to look at the athletes with the weights off to the side, and just kind of maybe talk about the athletes and maybe do a little guesstimation on how they'll do on each event. Event number 1 in the open men's is the overhead medley. We have a 245 log, a 265 axle, and a 200-pound sandbag. Event number 2, yoke squat, 505 for reps. That's going to be a pretty cool event. Farmer's carry, 275 a hand, not a bad weight, not too heavy, not too light. Event number 4, axle deadlift, trump weight, 505 or 555 for reps. Event number 5, Conan's wheel, 500 pounds. That's going to be a grinder. I'm curious to see what people do on that. So on our U120/open roster, we have Nathan Martin, Dan Ursino, Hans Fuhrman, Jesse Hall, and Morgan Ward. However, there's actually 2 additions that are not on this list in Ty Mormon and Cam Mowat. First athlete we're going to look at is Nathan Martin. Now, Nathan competed a couple times this summer so far, first time being at Caribou Strongest, and then the other time, more recently, at Kelowna Strongest. Taking a look at his overhead first, particularly with logs, we have a 215 log, a 235 log, and then a 255, all 3 of which he successfully repped out. The 255 being a little bit tricky. He has a little bit of trouble on the push press. The clean is pretty decent, but I think he'll do okay. He'll definitely get that 245 log at the start of the overhead medley. But as for axle, I really can't tell because the Kelowna Strongest contest was just a dumbbell for reps. As for his squat, fortunately at the Caribou Strongest, we did have a car squat where he actually did pretty well. With this kind of event, it really just comes down to body positioning, and the yoke squat, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit more difficult because you don't have anything to push against. You just literally have to go straight up and down, but I think he's going to do fairly well on this yoke squat. His farmers is pretty decent. These handles here from Caribou Strongest are also 275, same as what the Shuswap boys are going to be doing. He did have trouble on this frame, which they are a thicker handle, but I think if the farmers at Shuswap have a similar width handle as what was at Caribou's, then he should have no problem on the return. As for his deadlift, it's really hard to tell because both of these contests were an elevated pull. Like by the time you pull the slack out of the bar, the weight is at or above your knees. And in this contest in Kelowna Strongest, he did manage to pull 690, which is still a very good weight. Hard to lock out with, but we'll see how good he is from the floor. As for Conan's wheel, there's no data on anybody about a Conan's wheel because we never ever see Conan's wheel, but he does move pretty well with these sandbags and he's very fast on his transition, so hopefully that translates well into the Conan's wheel. Next we have Dan Ursino. Dan Ursino competed recently at the Kelowna Strongest and then previously before that at Caribou Strongest, similar to what Nathan Martin did. Now, Dan's overhead is a work in progress. He's working on it. He's asking for tips and he's listening well. In this video, he says he did 2 failed attempts at 250. But I'm really hoping that after his experience at Twin Rivers, which is this coming weekend, Shuswap being 2 weekends from now, that maybe he learns a thing or two about pressing under pressure. Hopefully he unlocks another gear while he's in comp. As for his squatting, I haven't really seen too many footage. Actually, I haven't seen any videos. I can't recall of him doing squats in the gym. But we did have the car squat at Caribou Strongest where, unfortunately, he did 0. I believe it's just a matter of poor body positioning. With this kind of squat, you really have to have your feet forward, but he unfortunately had his feet back, and that was to his disadvantage. So hopefully he performs better on the yoke squat. Farmer's carry, he's good on the pick, but he's a little slow on the walk, and his hands still can't quite grip that for as long as he needs to. I just hope that that's another thing that he's working on leading up to the Farmer's carry at Shuswap. Axle deadlift, I do foresee Dan doing the 505 deadlift. And based off of this training footage here, 545 for 1.9, I think Dan's good for probably 4 or 5 reps with the 505. And as for the Conan's wheel, this is him doing some front holds in the position that you would for a Conan's wheel. And 475 is your hold. I don't know. I don't know if that's really going to work too well. Moving with the weight is completely different than just standing there, but hopefully that works out for him. Doing something is better than nothing. Next in line, we got Hans Fuhrman. He just came off a second place finish at Kelowna Strongest, and he's a very technical lifter. What he lacks in static strength, he makes up for in his ability to, well, work technically. In his overhead presses, he likes to practice a lot of split jerks, which he's getting pretty good at. So, like I said, whatever he lacks in static strength, he's absolutely going to make up for it on the split jerk, and he's going to smash the overhead medley without a doubt. I've seen lots of his stories. Unfortunately, they're not up on his story anymore. I missed them, but yeah, he's going to crush it. He does train his squat quite regularly. I've seen that in the stories, but unfortunately we don't have any posts. But he's going to do good on the yoke squat. His farmer's carry is very, very strong. I believe he has the BC record right now for 352 pounds a hand. And yeah, the 275 pounds a hand is going to be no problem for him. The axle deadlift will be good to see. I believe he's good for 555 for several reps. Maybe 4 or 5 reps. This is old footage. Like, this is maybe 3 years old where he did 585. It was a bit of a grinder, but he also looks quite a bit smaller here than he does now. So I believe he's got a little bit more gas in the tank to crank out some heavy reps. Hans is very good at moving events, so I would expect him to do very well at the Conan's wheel. Next, we have Jesse Hall. Jesse's been working on his overhead a lot, particularly for this competition. He's been running that medley into the ground for the past several weeks. And I think I full-heartedly believe he's going to complete the event, and he might even put up a pretty decent time while he's at it. He's also a guy that trains squat quite regularly. This is a 500-ish pound squat for a pretty good set. I think he's going to do well on the yoke squat. He's going to push some of the better squatters in the contest for sure. Jesse's farmer walk is really, really good. I had the good fortune of competing against him a couple years ago where we did do a farmer's walk, and it was a 350 pounds per hand for 40 feet one way and 40 feet back. And he managed the first 40 feet, and then his grip just couldn't make it the rest of the way. But 350 pounds is no joke. 275 will be easy peasy. Jesse's also a pretty strong deadlifter. I believe he'll be good for the 555. I really can't say how many reps he's going to get, but damn, he's going to fight like hell while he's trying. Conan's wheel is hard to say. He doesn't really post a whole lot of moving events aside from his farmer's carry. But yeah, I mean, as long as he can maintain his stability, keep his core strength, he'll probably do okay. Next, we have Morgan Ward. Now, Morgan has more recently been competing in novice level competitions where I'm not sure exactly where he's been doing. Actually, in this video, he says he's gotten third. So I hope that means he's made some improvements, because last year at Twin Rivers, he was struggling. He had a really hard time. He let's just be honest, he wasn't really good at the log. He zeroed the log. So I'm really hoping that he can at least get that first log in the overhead medley. And if he could at least clean the axle, that's all I can ask for. Squat is another thing I don't have too much info on for Morgan. But yeah, I honestly really can't say much because I've never seen him squat. And a lot of the things that we've done don't really transfer well to predicting how well somebody does in squats, so we'll see how he does. As for the farmer's walk, I couldn't see any videos from his more recent contests about a farmer's walk, but this is from Twin Rivers that he did last year, where I think his issue here is just core bracing. Maybe just hip strength as well, so I hope that's come up since then. This is a 550-pound deadlift from Morgan from about 2 years ago. And that was actually a pretty smooth rep. It didn't look too difficult, but it didn't quite look too easy either. I'd imagine he's made some good progress since then. So I would see maybe a 505 deadlift for, if he does choose the 505, I would say maybe 5 or 6 reps. But if he does choose the 555, if he has made some significant progress since then, 3. I think 3 is a good number. Morgan is in fact the only guy to have any footage of doing a Conan's wheel. And he did okay. He didn't make one full revolution. I think it's just a matter of him moving too slow. The more time that you're spending underneath that thing, the harder it is, right? The slower you go, the more time you spend, the less ground you cover. You just have to go fast. If you have the stability, you need to go as fast as you can. Hopefully he picks up the pace at Shuswap. Second last on the list, we have Ty Mormon, one of the last minute sign-ups on this contest. His log is alright. He's got a 275 jerk push press. Not too bad. The tricky thing with those jerk presses is you need to get your balance just right. If your balance is off by even a little bit, you're dumping that log. So this was 275. I'd imagine 245 will go a lot smoother. He'll have no problem with that, hopefully. I have no idea how well his axle will be. Not very many of these people do have any axle press footage, so I'm curious to see if he's going to adopt that push jerk technique with the 265 axle. We've got a little bit of footage of him doing squats. Unfortunately here, he says everything felt heavy, and it wasn't particularly heavy. It was sub 400 pounds, so hopefully his strength builds up and comes back better on the contest day. Another bit of an older video here, 210-pound farmers on each hand. This is substantially lighter than what will be at the Shuswap, but here he said he was working on his smooth transition, so transitions are very important to get to practice and to get good at. So yeah, hopefully his return on the farmers will be quite decent. He recorded a 550 by 2 axle deadlift just 2 weeks ago. Very good timing for a top lift like that. And that first rep looked pretty good. A little bit tricky on the lockout here, and a little slower on the second rep. Actually, the second rep looked better than the first rep, which is funny because that's typically what happens to me when I'm deadlifting too. Ty is a leaner, more conditioned, more athletic guy, so I would assume that transitions well into his Conan's wheel. He does have a CrossFit background, so I would expect his conditioning to be the best in the field, if not one of the best in the field. Lastly, we have Cam Mowat. Cam Mowat is a very strong presser. He's actually been going a little tit for tat back and forth with Hans on their stories about who's going to complete the overhead medley fastest. And we've even had the good fortune of seeing little side-by-side clips of them where they seem to clock in pretty damn close. So if Cam can just move a little bit faster, then he'll absolutely beat Hans, because Hans needs a little bit of time to get his split jerk and all that. As for other events, not a whole lot more to see. He has a couple more pressing videos and a couple arm over arm videos, and here we have a 700-pound yoke where he moves very, very easy. Like, this is a very, very strong yoke, and this is even from almost 3 years ago. So I would expect him to do well on moving events like the Farmers if his grip is good, and the Conan's wheel if his cardio is good. As for the deadlift, I would assume he's a strong deadlifter because he's a big guy, and typically big guys are good at deadlifts. Yoke squat, I think I remember him saying something about making the yoke squat heavier, so let's hope he can back that up. So that's my preview for the Shuswap Showdown. Who do I think is going to do well? I think it's going to be a fight between Hans and Cam, but I think Jesse's going to be right there. I think Jesse, this is probably the best chance that Jesse has of cracking like second place or even first place if he performs exceptionally well. But I think it's honestly Hans' show to lose at this point. But as for a couple guys that I'm really going to be looking out for is Dan and Morgan. Those are the two guys where they've struggled in the past, but they keep coming back. They have a great attitude, and they're just here for the love of the game. So I just want to see them performing well as best as they can and making progress from their past performances. Thanks for watching this preview, guys. Stay tuned for the next one. This is Loghouse Strong.